Hello, Muneeb. Welcome
Great.
to our audience. This is a super special treat for us. The co-founder of Stacks, the CEO of Trust Machines, now one of the largest Bitcoin companies in the world, if I'm correct. Welcome to the stage, Muneeb. Can you tell a little bit more about how you got here, how you created Stacks, what Trust Machines is doing, before we get into all the wishlist items? I think the audience would love to get to know you.
Yep, happy to get into it. So a little bit of background about myself. I'm a computer scientist. I did my PhD at Princeton, and back in 2013, when I was supposed to graduate, that's when I discovered Bitcoin, and the rest has been just a rabbit hole, going deeper and deeper into Bitcoin and discovering things. And I still feel, honestly, it's been 10 years, but I still feel we're at an early stage of Bitcoin, and there's so much more to be done with this technology, and taking it to more than 1 billion people on the planet. I still think we're like very early stage. So very quickly, what is Stacks? So I'm a co-creator of Stacks. It's a very decentralized project, kind of like community run, and there are many independent companies in it. And the need for Stacks really came from our work that we did on Bitcoin L1 back in the days. Right, so Bitcoin, as you know, is very simple at the base layer, and we were trying to build like certain applications on top, like a decentralized names and so on. And we basically realized, both from a scalability perspective, like you can't have too many transactions at Bitcoin L1, but also from a functionality perspective, like Bitcoin is not going to change. If you're a developer, you want new features at Bitcoin L1, it's almost like Bitcoin L1 is like sacred place, right? You can't just make changes to it. That's the value prop of Bitcoin, that it doesn't change, it's durable. So I think by late 2016, early 2017, it was pretty clear to us that the world is actually going to evolve in L2s. And interestingly, that's like 5 years later, even in Ethereum, the same thesis is playing out now, right? So Ethereum was trying to scale through sharding and whatnot at L1, and they've sort of like given up on those plans now. And most of the scalability and functionality on Ethereum is actually going to happen in L2s as well, right? So on the stack side, so we started doing early R&D work on Stacks late 2017, and developed a new programming language that's very safe for programmers, because I think safety is probably like the number one thing that matters when you're working with crypto capital, especially Bitcoin, that is very valuable to people, and they don't want to lose it in hacks on smart contracts and whatnot. And then we worked on this consensus algorithm for how the L2 is going to work, and the system went live in early 2021. So right now, I would say there are some pretty cool features of Stacks that are already live. For example, the smart contracts can actually read Bitcoin state, and they can respond to it. All of the data on Stacks actually gets settled on Bitcoin, and you can do atomic swaps with assets on Stacks and BTC. But there are a bunch of things that are missing as well right now, right? So out of the things that are sort of like missing and are really important, the number one thing is being able to easily move Bitcoin capital from L1 into the L2 and then back, right? So that's called SBTC. So think of SBTC as a cheaper, faster, and more programmable Bitcoin. And it's decentralized. Anyone can move BTC from L1 into L2. It's fully backed by BTC at all times. So you lock up your BTC on L1, move it to L2, and then you can move it back. And the second thing is that the Stacks network right now is sort of limited by Bitcoin speeds and bandwidth. So, and we're trying to like do a massive upgrade on both the speed and the number of transactions you can do, because I think it matters for UX. If people are working with something, Bitcoin gets a block every 10 to 30 minutes, and it might feel very slow to a lot of users, but you can do that at L2. L2s could be much faster than the Bitcoin L1. I think as those two features sort of like go live, I think the picture would become much more complete, and I think that's when real scalable applications for Bitcoin can be built. So let me sort of like pause there. I'll switch gears to Trust Machines, but maybe Albert, you want to add something?
Yeah, let me ask it. That was excellent. Let me ask a follow-up question, just so we make sure the audience is following us. So You mentioned, okay, with the new release of the Nakamoto release on Stacks, it's going to not only increase the speed, but now Bitcoin will have a lot more programmability and on with less gas fees, right? With less cost, basically, less transaction fees. Now, was that correct?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, super. And let's I'll save my other questions for after you introduce trust machines. Thanks.
Great. Yeah. So I think to build up on what Albert said, think of this as if you are in Ethereum and the gas fees are very high, you can actually move your ETH into a Ethereum L2, and then you can use the applications that are maybe only running in the L2 and they're not running on L1, so you access some additional functionality. But the ETH L1 itself has like a bunch of functionality and a bunch of applications like Uniswap you can just use on ETH L1. So in many ways, L2s on Bitcoin are even more important because there is not just about the high gas fees or the slow transaction times, which are great at the L1 level because it's optimizing decentralization and durability. So it should work like that. The L2s could be faster, but much more importantly, they can have any type of complex applications running at L2 as well. So if you want to participate in a liquidity pool, you want to have a decentralized exchange, whatever you want to do, you can do that in the L2. So they've become much more important on the Bitcoin side. And obviously, Bitcoin has far greater capital base, right? That's like $500 billion basically just sitting there. Not a lot of people are programming it right now, which is a big opportunity. And that is the opportunity that sort of like Trust Machines saw. So we raised capital into Trust Machines early last year. We raised around like $150 million. And the mission of Trust Machine is really to build a large ecosystem of Bitcoin applications and take Bitcoin to more than 1 billion users, which is obviously a very ambitious goal. And the way we are organized internally at Trust Machine is we have a bunch of different business units, and each business unit is focusing on a particular application, right? So right now we have 2-3 applications in the pipeline, and we fully understand that the infrastructure in Bitcoin actually requires a lot of work right now. Right, so there are many other companies that are contributing to the infrastructure, both L1 and L2 infrastructure, and we are playing our role as well. So we have a core engineering team, or think of them as an infrastructure engineering team. So we're doing a bunch of work on pushing SBTC work forward because we have a clear business incentive and seeing SBTC live. Our applications are going to use it. So any resources that we can contribute to kind of like speed up the progress of this open source technology, we clearly have a business interest in doing that. And similarly, it's not just the Stacks L2 that we are interested in. We look at technologies like DLCs, which are these slightly more advanced scripting for L1, because some of our apps can interact with these DLCs as well. So overall, I would say Bitcoin is at a stage where there's tons of potential, but the dev tooling and infrastructure is not as mature as Ethereum or some other places, right? So that's why our company basically needs to do that work and contribute. Just like there are other players as well who contribute to that infrastructure. But our business sort of like motive is building these applications, and that's sort of like our focus.
Super, yeah, and that's the exciting thing about Bitcoin is that if all that stuff was already developed, then we wouldn't be having the Bitcoin Olympics, and the opportunity wouldn't be there, right? Now I heard a few keywords there. Trust Machines is going to enable Bitcoin to be adopted by 1 billion users, right? So that's one of the keywords. A few other keywords I heard was the upgrade with SBTC. That's going to unlock a lot of things. Now, I could tell like in the background you have a bigger vision of what's going on. Can you like let's say, okay, Nakamoto release done, Trust Machines is well on the way. Like what's the end game? Like how does a sustainable Bitcoin economy look like to you in your mind? Can you help paint a picture of that before we get into the wish list items that we need to build today to get there? So let's start with that end in mind. Let's start with the vision. I'd like to get into your mind. This is a question that I've always wanted to ask you, and I was going to ask you before, but I'm saving it for the audience online now.
Yeah,
so more people can hear about it. Yeah.
Absolutely, right. So I think of this way, that if in the late 90s, for example, if you discovered the internet, I did in like 97, 98, which ages me, right? I was a teenager back then. And you would almost like, you would see that this technology is so much superior that it's going to start replacing things like newspapers. Just initially, like, as a small application, sure, it would do other things as well, but it was pretty clear to people that, oh, I can actually now read all this information online. Maybe there's less need for a newspaper or something, right? But it took a very long time until blogs took off or online publications took off, and the legacy media actually started to feel the pain, and they had to adapt to the new technology as well, right? So even things like the New York Times, a bunch of their readership actually now comes online on NewYorkTimes.com and not just the print paper, right? So similarly, think of like Bitcoin as like digital money, and Bitcoin clearly stands out from all of the other cryptocurrencies because Bitcoin is only focused on being money, right? It's not trying to be kind of like a gas asset for a smart contract platform or anything else. Bitcoin is actually pretty different from every other cryptocurrency. So think of this as like, in terms of the internet analogy, Bitcoin is the internet that's focused on being money, right? And there are other smaller networks as well that are trying to do other things, but Bitcoin is really focused on being money. And what's going to happen is that it is such a vastly superior technology from what we are used to that slowly people are going to start switching to the digital money, like truly digital money. Just like we switched over to digital things versus like paper newspapers, right? And that's going to be a massive change because Bitcoin has a limited supply. It's completely auditable, completely transparent. And actually, sure, it takes maybe 10, 30 minutes to get a block, but that's way faster than wires and everything else that the legacy system provides you, right? And plus, the biggest thing, by far the biggest thing, is that it is programmable. Right? It is programmable money. Like you can't program like dollars. You can't get into people's bank accounts and build applications in a straightforward way. It's open source, it's transparent, and it's basically going to eat the world, right? Because it is such superior technology, and we're very early stages of that, right? Like, so I've seen 3 market cycles for Bitcoin. Like 2013 was a bull market, then 2017 was a bull market, and then 2021 was a bull market. And every cycle, there's like a next level that gets unlocked, right? Bitcoin becomes bigger, much more capital and developers enter, more users enter, right? So early on, it would have been a big deal if we got even like single-digit million users. Then it was double-digit millions. Now according to some stats, we are hitting like 100 million. I actually think it's much lower. Maybe 100 million people have maybe tried out Bitcoin once in their life. But in terms of like actual more regular people, we might still mean double-digit millions or early double-digit millions. And I think at some point it's going to be, like the internet. Like imagine even in developing countries, people have their cell phones and they're always connected. They're online. They're using WhatsApp, and people don't even think about it, right? Or a step before, it's going to be like electricity. It's everywhere. You can plug into a socket. You don't even think about electricity is there or not. Bitcoin is going to be that thing. For value transfer, for keeping your savings, for actually building applications on top. Like the internet became so pervasive that you don't even usually think about it. When you go to CNN.com or Instagram or anything else, you're not even thinking about TCP/IP or the underlying network. It's just there. It sort of like works. It's everywhere, right? And right now, like in terms of the opportunity that I see, so that's how I look at Bitcoin. It's actually going to force a lot of legacy institutions to actually become much more transparent. Like people don't know how money really works, how banks kind of like work, or what are the risks with them, how governments can just print more money and keep raising inflation. It's actually going to fix a lot of problems on the planet because it is such a transparent open source system. So it's much more fair to people, right? Like if you are a hardworking individual who has your savings in Bitcoin, that is actually better protected than some system that is actually very kind of like black box like, and you don't know how it operates, and there could be rapid inflation and the value of your savings go down. I can go on and on about this topic because it's such a important thing in the world that really impacts lives of everyday people, and Bitcoin is sort of like a solution, right? And being an engineer, being a programmer, the opportunity that I see is that the next wave of the growth of Bitcoin, it's actually going to come from a Cambrian explosion of applications built around Bitcoin, right? And we are at this very special moment where that infrastructure that sort of enables that, right? Like think of that as like an iPhone moment for Bitcoin, right? Like when suddenly developers could build anything on a phone, and they couldn't do that with legacy phones, right? Like they just didn't have the capability. So this is like the iPhone moment for Bitcoin, where suddenly devs can actually now come in and they can start programming with it. And then you're limited by your imagination at that point. And over here, I think the thesis is even stronger, because when the iPhone came, nobody knew what type of apps developers can build. We already have data. We know Ethereum, we know Solana, we know these other networks where developers came in and they built some pretty amazing things. It's just that they haven't built it on the largest network. They haven't built it with the best money. So I think people will build some truly new things as well. But I think at least the initial set of applications is actually pretty clear what can be built over here.
Oh, that is so exciting. I love how you say that. It's almost like everything else was an experiment on Ethereum and other chains, and now that we know what works and what doesn't, now it saves us so much time innovating, right? Because the business models, the users, etc., that all it's okay. And now, like you said, with all these new tools coming online on Bitcoin, the stuff that you're pioneering with your team, it's going to unlock all of that. And now we can re-envision all that with Bitcoin, but better, right? And better, right? And then I love, like, I love the way how you're using all these different examples in history, right? Electricity, the internet, and how internet, like just how internet affected media, right? In the beginning, you're like, oh, it's not really like a big thing, like very little amount of users, but eventually it's completely disrupted the media industry. And that's just one disruption, right? And then Bitcoin is at that it's about to hit that inflection point where there's going to be a Cambrian explosion, right? So it's like an awesome time. So we have a few minutes left here. Now, for the people in the audience, right? There's people, we have over 200 signups just on Dev Post. I think 300 plus total now. And people are still signing up because they could keep signing up until April 11th. Now, let's that was already super inspirational. Now let's bring it down to today. Before the next Bitcoin halving, what are the, like, if you had more time, because you're doing so many things, but if you had more time, what would be the ideas that you would advise the builders today at the Bitcoin Olympics hackathon to build, right? And create a proof of concept in a week and a half, right? What would you encourage them to build? This is going to be super exciting.
Yeah, so I think first let me comment a little bit on the timing, because it's important to think about the timing. And I think the way to think about this is that a couple of maybe 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago or something, there was this market opportunity for these alternate L1s to Ethereum, right? And it was sort of like contrarian at that point. A lot of people were like, Ethereum has already won. Why would someone go to a new L1 and so on, right? And this was the time when people like Solana and Avalanche and all these folks were starting off, and it felt like a contrarian thing at the time. And then last bull market, so in this industry, historically, for whatever reason, I actually think the reason is that Bitcoin has a 4-year window for halvings, and then the rest of the industry basically just follows it. In the last bull cycle, we actually saw so much interest and growth in these alternate L1s, right? Where people came in and they were building applications, and we saw rapid growth and whatnot. The jury is still out, like how sustainable it is long term. How many of these are going to stick around or be successful? And I think similarly, Ethereum L2s were 2-3 years ago, like sort of like questionable. People were like, hey, we don't know what these L2s are, would they ever work, and so on. And right now, the L2s are gaining a lot of attention, and maybe you could argue maybe even more attention than these alternate L1s, right? So scaling Ethereum, things like Arbitrum, they're gaining a lot of interest. And I think you always want to be where the puck is going and not where it was, right? So if you look at this right now, the state of the world is that Ethereum L2s are sort of like getting more attention, right? And people are sort of questioning that if Bitcoin or Ethereum are so established already and they can just have L2s on top, why would you need 100 different chains? Why wouldn't just more consolidation happen on Bitcoin and Ethereum? So looking at those opportunities, you could go today and try to build on Ethereum L2. I would argue that it's a much more saturated market. There are 5, 6 pretty, large L2s already. There are already a ton of developers chasing after that. Whereas the total market of Ethereum is actually much smaller than Bitcoin capital, right? And on the Bitcoin side, you have a much larger market, much more capital, much less competition right now. And this might not remain the case forever, but at least right now, at this point in time, in Q2 of like 2023, there is less competition. And you can come in and you can actually run fast and try to have more of a head start before the rest of the market kind of like discovers this opportunity, right? So that's on the timing front. And usually Bitcoin halvings, they signal the start of a bull market. So that means we're roughly 1 year away from that. And given the banking crisis and everything else happening, it's possible that we maybe start seeing some growth even earlier, right? Like you don't have to wait for a Bitcoin halving before the action really starts. So I think timing-wise, this is actually like a pretty, I would say, unique and interesting time to be building on Bitcoin, to be ahead of the curve and actually be prepared when things like BTC launch, like you already have, a startup going. So now coming into the specific ideas, stuff that, I would love to see. I think that there is a lot of opportunity to basically, I'll even start with like, very, very simple things. And again, some of the ideas that I'm mentioning, I'm not a lawyer, right? You have to check with your local jurisdiction, wherever in the world you are, about any legal restrictions of building these things. I think even starting with like very simple games could be interesting, where you use Bitcoin or even the smallest unit of Bitcoin, like Satoshis or Sats, for payments, right? So imagine that you set up some sort of a game where the winner actually gets a payout. I mean, on one extreme, it could actually be literally just gambling, right? Like and there is a history of like, there's a game you should look up, like Satoshi Dice back in the day, that actually got a lot of users onto Bitcoin, like 10 years ago maybe. And I think you can build a much scalable, much bigger version of games like that, where people are putting in like small amount of Satoshis. They have some random probability function where somebody wins and they get a Bitcoin payout. Again, check with the local jurisdictions, but then you can build more sophisticated things. What if somebody builds a game of chess where a bunch of players, they pool in BTC capital to be able to play? It's your ticket to play, and the same thing is used as the winning prize towards the end. So you're playing with random people online, but it's a little bit more interesting because there's like real money that you could win as a prize, and it's all decentralized, right? There's no company. You don't have to. The beauty of this is you don't have to worry about, hey, I just paid this company or this random person, and that person might run away with my money, right? No, it's a smart contract. Money is sitting there, everyone can see it, and whoever wins the smart contract would actually give that person the capital. I think on a similar note, there is in the world that we live in, there is a lot of need for great tools for crowdsourcing. So imagine, things like GoFundMe on the traditional internet. I think Bitcoin-related crowdfunding tools could actually be 10x more powerful, because Bitcoin is like freedom money, right? Like it's literally it's so easy. Like I'm a Bitcoin user. It's so easy for me to actually use Bitcoin for payments compared to any other rails, like banks and whatnot. Like there are restrictions, there's friction and things. And so if you build something where someone says, this is the cause for which I want to raise capital for, and here are some easy tools, capital can literally flow in from everywhere. We saw that with even the war in Ukraine, where people are trying to help some of the victims and whatnot, and literally like tens of millions or maybe more of capital, like within a couple of days, was flowing in Bitcoin, Ethereum, other currencies. Ethereum has those tools right now. Bitcoin doesn't, right? So these could be these DAOs, like Bitcoin DAOs, where you can really make progress there. Another idea, which I would even raise my level of warnings to even higher for this one, because I think we have seen that certain jurisdictions like the US and others could be pretty strict for this particular use case. But again, this is freedom technology, and I'm a big privacy advocate. So I would always advocate for privacy preserving solutions. And the reason is that I think even cash is a lot more private than some of the banking transactions, right? So having some sort of a digital money that is maybe as private as cash is actually, I would consider that a basic right. But well, I use cash as a US citizen, and I'm talking about a similar level of privacy online that I get in the real world while using the US dollar, right? So you can build those tools. You can build these privacy tumblers, which is sort of like they simulate cash changing hands, right? So there's enough sort of like privacy that gets baked in. And I do think the state of Bitcoin privacy mixers or tumblers on L1 is actually pretty weak, right? So there's a huge opportunity that, because L2, always remember that L2 is going to be much more powerful, faster, cheaper, but most importantly, much more powerful in terms of writing smart contracts. So the things that you couldn't do on L1 to build a really good privacy tumbler, you can actually do pretty quickly, pretty rapidly on L2. And then, capital comes in from L1, gets sort of like, mixed and can go out. Again, for this particular application, check with your local jurisdictions. I, as a US citizen, probably wouldn't build it because I live in the US. But I would certainly be a user unless told otherwise, right? Because I love privacy advocate, and I would certainly be a user, and I am a user of Bitcoin tumblers even today, right? So I'm speaking from personal experience that they're not that good, and there is a need for a much better solution that can be built using L2s.
Okay, excellent. So we have thank you. Those are very insightful hackathon ideas that could potentially have real world impact and could grow far beyond the hackathon. Now we have 2 more minutes. Let's SBCC is a really amazing thing now. If we build with those ideas, if any of the teams build with those ideas, how is that related to SBTC? What could SBTC do as an unlock, right? I mean, like
so I would say in all of those ideas, it's very hard to try and implement them at Bitcoin L1. But with SBTC, what happens is that you build a smart contract in this language Clarity, which runs on the stacks L2, and you basically, SBTC is basically Bitcoin, right? It's backed BTC. So Bitcoin is locked on L1, and it's unlocked in the shape of SBTC on L2. And when people want to bring it back, they basically bring it back from L2 to L1, and BTC gets unlocked. So for all sort of like practical purposes, SBTC should be treated as BTC, like backed BTC. But it's programmable. So you can deploy it into a contract if you write a smart. So people can, even before SBTC launch, they can start playing around with some other asset, right? Like you can have like a temporary asset in your smart contract, or you can use XBTC, which is like a custodial asset on stacks today, and just build your app, use it with another asset, and when SBTC launches, you plug in the real thing, right? So that's something.
That's right. Yeah, that sounds like a winning strategy. And I encourage everyone to pick one of these ideas. I'm talking to the audience right now. Pick one of these ideas that Muneeb just shared. This is all these could become potentially game changers. And then once SBTC is launched, that will supercharge, right? So it'll be a tiered approach. Now, let's end up with some encouraging words, because we have Hero, we have experts, we have people coming on next week talking about how to actually open up Clarity and look under the hood and do a crash course with these things. Now like give some encouraging words to our builders before we jump to the next section.
Yeah, so I think sometimes like people ask me that, I've been in this industry for like 10 years, what keeps me going, what keeps me motivated? And I tell them that, think of it this way. I would be doing this even if I wasn't getting paid. Like I have a job, I work at Trust Machines, right? I'm the CEO. Even if I wasn't getting paid. And the reason is that it is such an amazing combination of working on cutting edge technology, which is completely open source and is something that is good for society, right? So you are sort of like, when you're building on Bitcoin, you're on the right side of history. You are carrying the flag of the original, cypherpunks that sort of like started the internet like back in the 90s. People who stood up for, power to the people. We believe in, privacy. We believe in internet freedom. We believe in open source technologies that is actually good for society and good for the planet. And I think you're doing something like that while actually working on cutting edge technology. If you're a really intellectually curious person, you enjoy building cool new stuff, you're sort of like doing that. And there is a huge potential financial incentive because Bitcoin is such a large asset, and these markets are so large that even if you capture like very small amounts of this, there's very, very clear kind of like financial upside as well. So that combination is like such a killer combination that I would have done it just for the fun of it, just for, working on open source. But you throw in all the other reasons, and then I go like, what else can I be doing in my life? Like this is the time. Literally, I think there, even 10 years ago, it felt like there will be books written about these people and these times and these technologies, and now there already are. Some of the early people that I've collaborated with and worked with, or some of our investors, they're already in history books, right? And there are movies being made about how Bitcoin started and how it changed the world. And to be a part of this revolution, even a small part, like it's just, I think it's a privilege to be able to live through this and actually contribute.
Thank you so much for those inspirational words, Muneeb. That I feel like that embodies the innovative spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit on Bitcoin. And I think that that's a perfect way to end it. We're inviting everybody in the audience to join this Bitcoin revolution. We have to build this sustainable Bitcoin economy together. So thank you so much, Muneeb. You heard it from the master. You guys have a lot of ideas now. Join the Bitcoin Olympics and hack it out. Also, Muneeb has generously offered 2 small time slots, right, for the winners. You have to win in the competition in order to be able to get his one-on-one time. All right, so thank you so much for generously offering those 2 time slots, and I'm excited. April 19th, we're going to announce the winners, and thank you so much again, audience. This is Muneeb. He's CEO of Trust Machines, also the founder of Stacks blockchain. Thank you so much. All right, Stacks, of course, the L2 on top of Bitcoin. Thank you, Muneeb. Thank you for joining us, and looking forward to seeing more of you in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.